Why is the Friends TV show so successful? Well, it's because of the great writing and the charisma of the cast, but I believe it's also because of the music. I'm not talking about the famous music they used like Jackson Browne, U2, or the Police. I'm talking about the other music. The music that transitions from scene to scene or going to a commercial. These music cues set up the mood for the scene, whether it's uplifting, sneaky, jaunty, or sad. This music helps convey the emotion of a scene. As a musician and producer, I wanted to find out who the studio musicians were that played on these short musical cues. The show was taped in Los Angeles on the Warner Brothers lot, so I immediately thought of my LA musician friends. I reached out to some of them, and I think you'll be shocked at what I found out. A special shout out and thank you goes to one of the Friends music producers, Giorgio Bertuccelli, who graciously answered my call and led me on my journey to find out about these studio musicians, who they were. Every time I watch Friends, I hear one of those musical scene transitions, and I wonder, who are the studio musicians making this music? I found out that I've met two of the drummers, and I've actually worked with one of the bass players, and I had no idea that he played on the Friends music. I'll share these stories with you in a little bit. What does Barry Manilow, Madonna, David Lee Roth, Cher, Elton John, Shania Twain, Carly Simon, Steely Dan, Michael Jackson, Ricky Martin, and Mariah Carey all have in common? Well, their studio musicians also played on the Friends music. These are the best session musicians in LA. Every one of these guys that I talked to absolutely loved their time in the Friends recording sessions. So let's start off with Michael Skloff. He's an Emmy-nominated composer of the Friends theme song, I'll Be There For You. Michael is an accomplished composer and arranger for Broadway and TV. He worked with the best of the best, like Barry Manilow, Carly Simon, Randy Newman, and many more. He's also composed music for the TV shows Dream On, Jessie, and Grace and Frankie. Many of the Friends music cues featured the great guitar players James Harrah, Ritchotte, and Michael Thompson. James Harrah has played with Herbie Hancock, Peter Cetera, Jewel, and plenty of other hitmakers. Ritchotte played with Gino Vanelli, David Lee Roth, Steve Miller, and even Grandmaster Flash. Michael Thompson's credits are enormous, including Cher, Michael Jackson, Celine Dion, and Mariah Carey, just to name a few. A couple of the drummers that played on the Friends music cues are Vinnie Colaiuta and Peter Erskine, world-renowned drummers for sure. Vinnie played with everybody from Frank Zappa to Sting to Gino Vanelli and Paul McCartney, a freaking Beatle. Peter Erskine played with Weather Report, Steely Dan, Joni Mitchell, Ricky Lee Jones, and many others. Again, these are the top LA session musicians. One of the bass players for the Friends music was John Peña. John has played with Diana Ross, Ricky Martin, Nina Simone, Kenny G, and many others. John said, "We always had a blast with Giorgio and Michael, and we would help realize their ideas. There was freedom of expression for us, so they would give us plenty of room to play with the perimeters of the music cues." Another one of the Friends bass players that I found shocking was the legendary Neil Stubenhaus, because I know Neil. I've recorded with Neil. I've played concerts and hung out with Neil. He's done so much recording and touring in the music industry, it never came up in conversation that he played on some Friends music. When I asked him recently about Friends, he said he really doesn't remember the session. I bet that's because Neil is one of the most recorded bass players in history, with over 150 movie soundtracks and more than 600 albums. He has 20 Grammys, and he's been nominated for over 70 more. Now that is a professional working musician, and I'm honored and humbled to have worked with him. Now the drummer and bass player for most of the series was none other than the Bissonette brothers, Gregg and Matt Bissonette. Gregg said in an interview he was subbing for another drummer on a Broadway show, and Michael Skloff was the musical director. Michael asked Gregg if he would be interested in playing for a TV show that his wife was working on. Well, 6 months later, Gregg got the call, along with his brother Matt, to do the music sessions for Friends. I was so happy to find out that Gregg was one of the drummers for Friends. This legendary drummer has worked with David Lee Roth, Ozzy Osbourne, Santana, Don Henley, Duran Duran, and even Ringo Starr, another freaking Beatle. Now, Gregg's brother Matt is a very accomplished bass player as well, and he's played with Lita Ford, Christopher Cross, Boz Scaggs, Elton John, Tony Bennett, Julian Lennon, almost a Beatle, and many more. Holy cow, what a musical family the Bissonettes are. Now, this was really shocking to find out. Some of the other transitional music for Friends was pulled from a production music library, and that music was played and produced by one of my all-time favorite guitar players, the multi-award-winning Mr. Brent Mason. Now, Brent Mason is not only a phenomenal musician, but he's a really cool, down-to-earth guy. And he's played with, well, are you sitting down? Everybody in country music for the last 30-plus years. Chet Atkins, Randy Travis, Keith Whitley, Tanya Tucker, Ricky Skaggs, Martina McBride, Alan Jackson, Trisha Yearwood, George Strait, Brooks and Dunn, Shania Twain, Reba McEntire, Rascal Flatts, Blake Shelton, Alison Krauss, and I could keep naming names for like another 2 hours. Brent is one of the most recorded guitarists in history. Brent Mason told me exactly how he and his brother Randy got their music on Friends. They had recorded a bunch of music at Randy's studio to be used in a music library for CBS Music, which was later bought by Sony. So they edited a bunch of their full-length songs into shorter musical cues that could be used for the music library. I've made some library production music for CNN and HDTV, and I know that after doing all of the editing, there could be hundreds and hundreds of music cues. It's a lot of work, but it paid off for the Mason brothers. Brent told me that a 13-second clip and a 17-second clip of his songs are still bringing in a ton of royalties to this day. Actually, all of the musicians I spoke to said that they are still getting royalty checks 25-plus years later. I'm happy that that part of the music business is still working. So here's the story about how I met two of the drummers of F.R.I.E.N.D.S, Vinnie Colaiuta and Gregg Bissonette. I met them in 1989 at the Modern Drummer Drum Festival. I was invited backstage at the festival and shown to the dressing room shared by Vinnie and Gregg. My mind was blown. I mean, these guys were so nice and they greeted me with such a warm welcome. All of these guys are such pro musicians and just wonderful humans. And that's what makes me so happy. That one of my favorite shows with the most catchy little transition music that caught my ear was actually played by some of my favorite musicians, and now some of my friends. So here's a picture of me and Gregg and Vinnie back in 1989. Yep, we got some mullets going on. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm Princess Consuela Banana Hammock? No, I'm Daryl Nutt, and thank you for watching.